Welcome, everyone, to this episode of PEPTalk Podcast, Productive Environment Podcast. I am Andrea Anderson, CEO of Productive Environment Institute, and I'm joined here today by Barbara Hemphill, founder of Productive Environment Institute, and our special guest, Nancy Ray, host of podcast Work and Play with Nancy Ray. I was just telling her how much I love saying that, so I'm going to bring us on screen. We're so excited to be here today and have Nancy as our guest. We have lots to talk about. And Barbara, you and Nancy connected, and I believe she had you on her podcast, and you had this incredible conversation about surprise clutter. What else is Barbara talking about, right?
I was going to say, what else does, that's like, I tell Alfred that I'm going to go give a speech and he'll say, what are you going to talk about? And I say, how many years have you been married to me? And what have I ever talked about?
Thank you. Anything else at all? So before we do that, let me do our official introduction of Nancy so you guys know who Nancy Ray is. She is the wife to Will, mama to 4 kids. She doesn't look old enough to have 4 kids, but okay. Podcast host, writer, early riser, and coffee drinker. Can't have one without the other. Amen. Mrs. Mama, as she homeschools 3 days a week. I love that. Photographer, born and raised North Carolina girl, and 100% nerd when it comes to small creative business strategy. Most of all, she's grounded in her love and commitment to Jesus, who is the center of everything in her life. I love that. So welcome, Nancy, to our Pep Talk.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes. Well, I'm ready to dig in. So Barbara, you, based on your conversation with Nancy on her podcast, you guys discussed, of course, like I said, clutter, and you were talking about the 4 stages of clutter. You saw kind of a segue between what you guys discussed, what Nancy does, and the 4 stages of clutter. So right. The topic of today is the 4 stages of clutter, living content, the key to living clutter-free. So Barbara, I'm going to pass it over to you to tell us about that.
Right, thanks. Well, what we were talking about was when you have children, there's a lot of clutter. I mean, it just comes with the territory. And we were talking about different strategies. And one of the things that I feel so strongly about is, as parents, it is our responsibility to role model dealing with clutter. Because when I first started in the organizing industry, I would hear parents complain about, oh, my kids clutter. And then I'd go back and look at their office or their bedroom. And it's like, wait a minute, we need to role model. So I love talking to people who influence parents. And that brought me into the idea of, in my book, Love It or Lose It, Living Clutter-Free Forever, my co-author, actually, Maggie Bedrosian, came up with this concept of the 4 stages of clutter. And I love the idea. And so the first stage is situational. Well, having children is situational clutter. I mean, you can't have children and not have clutter at any age. I mean, I have 2 teenage grandsons, and my daughter will say there's lots of clutter. So situational, just think, but it's temporary. It's not forever. And it's because of us, or it might be because of a project. Like right now, my mother used to make caramel corn. That was homemade caramel corn. And so she did it at Christmas and I do it at Valentine's. So right now, my kitchen and my office looks like a wreck because I've been making and packaging caramel corn. So there's packages and caramel corn and all kinds of stuff. So that's situational clutter. The second one is embedded clutter. That's the one that is the biggest challenge. That represents years, perhaps decades of clutter. It may very well represent having grown up in a family that was cluttered and you never really experienced what clutter-free was about. And that really takes a plan and some accountability to get to it. Number 3 is impending clutter. And as you both know, this business was built on those 4 words of clutter is postponed decisions. So impending clutter is the stuff that's lying around that's waiting for a decision. And the key is there has to be a place to put it. If there isn't a place to put it. So like the old saying about a place for everything and everything in its place. And some people think that's what organization is. No, it isn't, because life happens. I mean, everything's not always going to be in its place. The problem is there has to be a place. So impending clutter is that. So one way to handle that is to do something like once a week, say, okay, all the flat surfaces have to be clear once a week. And then the fourth one is the most insidious, and I call it invitational clutter. That's the subscriptions to the magazines that you don't really read anymore, or the, automatic, you went on Amazon and got automatic shipments of a vitamin, but you don't really take it, or you go to the big box stores and it's cheaper to buy a whole case than it is to buy 4. And so you buy a whole case. It's the things that you invite in without really thinking about it. And that actually brought up something that Nancy and I talked about. She said that one of the things she did in her household, and I love this, was that January through March was a no buy day. So Nancy, talk about that, how that works, because I just love that. Oh, no buy. I don't mean day. I mean a no buy stage.
Yep, that's right. So goodness, I think the first time I did this was 10 years ago. And it was actually born out of a really interesting situation in my husband and I's life and marriage. So this is like before we had kids. Maybe people listening are familiar with Dave Ramsey and his steps to financial freedom, but we were very much so on the Dave Ramsey plan and following, his baby steps, and really wanted, we were like really into this about it, very excited. And so we got debt free. And then we were like, okay, we don't have kids. We're both working. Let's pay off our house early. So we ended up paying off our house at 25 and 26 years old. And then when we did that, I just thought that was like a free ticket to spend money like I wanted to, because I had earned it. And we were finally on baby step 7. And so those next 3 months, after we had been living on a budget, really hardcore for like 3 years, saving everything, putting everything on the house. Once we finally arrived and paid off our house, my contentment plummeted. I blew the budget, like in food and clothing. I was overspending in all these categories right after we became debt free, because I thought I had earned it. And I thought I had this entitlement attitude, like, well, I'm here, baby step 7. So I get to spend what I want to now. I'm going to shop at the nice grocery store, and I'm going to go, I'm going to shop at Whole Foods, and I'm going to go to Anthropologie and buy some nice things for myself. And my husband and I fought more over money those 3 months after we paid off our house than we had ever before in our marriage. And I went to a conference, and long story short, I just felt the Holy Spirit speaking to my heart that I needed to give up shopping for 3 months. And I, at first, was like, no, I'm good. I've given up shopping for most of our marriage. Like, I don't need to do that now. I just hit all of our goals. Now's the time to spend. And I wrestled with him for about 2 days and just could not shake this idea. But I really believe he was just calling me to see that my contentment does not come from stuff. It doesn't come from buying something new. Sure, we might get happiness, like a quick hit of happiness or excitement from something sparkly and new that we get to put in our home or that we get to wear. But true contentment runs a lot deeper than that. And so I finally said, okay, Lord, I am going to give up spending for 3 months. And I blogged about it and really just kind of dug deep in my heart and was like, where is my heart at? Am I really content with my walk with the Lord, with experiences, with family? And over the course of those 3 months, not only did I save money, I experienced this like wide range of amazing benefits from it. But I really grasped that my contentment comes from the Lord first and foremost. And also it does not come from stuff. And truly the things that make you happiest in your life are people and experiences, not things. And so I did it that first year, and I've just done it like every year, it's just kind of become a habit. I think there's been a few years that I didn't do it. I don't think I did it the year that we were moving into a new house. I really think I've only skipped 1 year in the last like 10 years. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's amazing.
It is. And it's such, it brings up so many really important things about that contentment doesn't come from stuff. And yet how often is that what it's a quick hit, I remember so many times where somebody would buy something and they'd like it and then they buy it in 5 colors, but they never wore the other 4 colors. The price tags never even came off. And that contentment does come from experiences and from relationships, not from stuff.
So I have a couple of questions. How
Yeah.
did so you call it I heard you say a spending freeze.
I call it the Contentment Challenge. That's kind of the name that I gave it, because it was like a challenge, not only I didn't want it to just be about stopping spending money. I wanted it to be about truly living a content life. And so, yeah, it's more than just a spending freeze, in my opinion. I think that it's tied to the spiritual side of your life, as well as physical. Like there's a lot of different layers that it hits on if you do it. And I think the focus has to shift to those places in your life. Otherwise, you'll just freeze your spending and then go back to normal without any.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you know what's, it's so interesting you said that. That is one of the biggest fears that we have with our clients when we're talking about getting organized. And we offer boot camps and programs and things. And one of the biggest things that comes up is, I'm afraid that I won't be able to keep it up. I'm afraid I won't be able to continue doing it. So whatever that transformation is, and what do you do to help people continue it, and make it not just about the stuff, but going deep and then continuing it going forward? How do you do that?
So throughout the Contentment Challenge, after doing it for several years in a row, I kind of came up with these prompts and challenges for people to do while they're going through it. So there's a focus every month on something to clean out in your home, a Bible verse to memorize, and an activity to pursue. And I really encourage them before they start the Contentment Challenge to buy or go to the library and get several books with this focus to help your mind kind of understand what it is to have a life that looks free, spiritually, and then also free of stuff. And what's really interesting is my first challenge in the first month is to clean out your closet. Because the first time I did this, I cleaned out my closet. And it was so weird. It was like all of a sudden, when I made myself not buy any more clothes, that boundary forced myself to get creative with what I had. And what I quickly realized was I just was so overwhelmed by my closet. The first step to even seeing the things that I liked was to get rid of a bunch of stuff. So I challenge people to get rid of up to 50% of the things in their closet to really pare down just what they love. And that's the first month of the challenge. And so I think to answer your question, to move forward and move past the Contentment Challenge and really establish these things in your life, hiding those things in your heart and renewing your mind is a big part of it. So like memorizing the scripture, reading the books, and kind of transforming the way that you think about life and stuff is like the first step, which is why I say like just to immerse yourself in that while you're on this. And then also replacing, you can't just stop something and stop a habit of shopping or whatever without replacing it with something really good. And so I really encourage people to find a new hobby or maybe an old hobby that they have not done in many, many years, and buy everything you need for that, whether it's cross stitching or riding a bike. Like get a used bike or buy some cross stitching stuff before the Contentment Challenge happens so that you can have something really fun that doesn't cost you money, but that you're able to do as a hobby during the Contentment Challenge to show yourself that this is way better than shopping. Like this is way better because we've created these pathways in our mind where we're just, oh, Amazon, boom, that makes me happy. Target, boom, that makes me happy. And the truth is that doesn't actually make you happy. It's just this pathway, this habit that you formed in your mind that really is just adding to a ton of clutter in your life, in your closet, in your home, and burdening you. And so I think by addressing the spiritual side of it and also replacing the bad habits with good ones. Once you end the contentment challenge, you've tasted a better way of life. So you want to keep going in that. You want to take hold of those things that actually are fulfilling versus you don't really want to just go back to the old way of buying stuff all the time. I actually have a really hard time shopping after I'm done with it. It takes me a little while, but I mean, I want to live in freedom and I still do shop, but I'm just so much more careful and intentional with every single buying decision that I make after I have not done it for 3 months, that I like my stuff a whole lot more than when I'm just used to spending all the time.
You used a word there that we use all the time, which is intentional. Mm-hmm. I mean, how many things do we do, just as you pointed out, just as a habit? It's just a habit in our brain to do that. I also love that you tackled the closet first. And even though in our boot camps, we're talking about paper and digital, I always mention closet because the closet is the first place you go generally when you get up in the morning. And how many people walk into their closet and feel something negative, guilty or overwhelmed or frustrated or angry or whatever, which means you're starting your day off all wrong. And so to make that closet what we call a productive environment is going to change your entire day. So I love that. And the other thing is, I ask people all the time, what is one thing that has to happen in your life for you to feel happy with your progress? Or we could apply it to yours and say, what is one thing in your life that needs to change for you to feel more content? And the answer to that question is a form of clutter. Whether it is guilt, I talked with someone this morning who has thousands and thousands of photographs of her children, and it's become a huge obsession that's taking away from her quality time with her children because she's so afraid that she's going to lose one of the, I mean, it's just awful. And so the idea that I love this concept of contentment, that's great.
It's so interesting that you mentioned the photos, Barbara, because I was a photographer for 12 years. And there were certain mothers of the bride that I would be photographing that would totally trust me to do my job and would be able to sit back and look at their daughter in the white dress and enjoy every minute. But occasionally there would be a mother of the bride who would have her camera and would be taking pictures over my shoulder the whole time. And I could tell this is a weird, tight-fisted, I need to have these pictures. And what if she gets it wrong? And I'm just thinking, what are you going to do with these 500 pictures that you're taking? That I'm taking the exact same ones that are going to be better than yours. No offense, but they just are. Like, my camera's way better, my skill's better. But she just would, and I knew a lot of those moms would have these clutter issues with just keeping photos of their children. I would just know, I could tell by their personality and some of the comments that they would say. And I don't even think I've told you this, Barbara, but I actually created a photo organization course called the Legacy Photo System that specifically organizes and tackles photos, because we are the first generation that is dealing with this. Like, even my mom's generation, she has tubs of photos that you can sort through. But what I'm going to be giving to my kids is not only tubs of photos, but albums that I've made, and also hundreds of thousands of digital files that they're not going to know what to do with. And I know this is speaking y'all's language because you know digital organization and you love this, but there's something sentimental, really difficult about organizing your photos, which is why I created that after my time as a photographer, because it's hard. It's emotionally hard. And we don't have the tools. We don't know what to do with that and how to pass that on to our children in a really loving way.
You are so right. I looked at your website last night. I found that course, by the way. I saw it. And I was pleased when I saw that you said digital and physical, because a lot of people do just digital or just physical. And you are spot on. We are in that generation that has both, and you'll be passing on both. So it's a unique, interesting challenge.
A lot of people think, well, how do I scan all of my printed photos and make them digital? Or no, how do I print all of my digital photos?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, there's both. And you have to have a plan for both of them and organize them in a way that brings you joy and that isn't overwhelming to the kids that you're going to pass them down to one day.
Right.
Well, and I love the word that they use the word system, because, that's the word we use all the time. And we use the acronym saving you space, time, energy, and money. And that's what you've created, a legacy. And we also talk about my passion, Vision Accelerator, is about helping people leave a legacy. Well, what bigger legacy is there than your photographs if you have a system? If you don't have a system, you're leaving a mess, a horrible mess.
And not just a mess, but like a mess layered with a lot of guilt, because it's really hard to throw photos away and it's really hard to delete photos, right? And so then you just have them and then you don't know what to do. So yeah, I'm really passionate about that. I think just being a photographer, I had a heart for legacy and beautiful things to start with. But now that I've transitioned out of that, I just want to give people the tools to know how to manage that. And because I see moms, I am a mom. I'm taking pictures of my kids every single day. So how do you manage your phone with 30,000 photos on it? What do you do with that? So it's overwhelming.
Yeah. This kind of ties into that invitational clutter, because I remember one of the things that when my first grandchild was born, photographs, right? So she'd come to the house. And so I would be trying to entertain and everybody be around. And I was like, I want to get a picture. And then one day I thought, I am missing the experience because I am so concerned that I'm missing the perfect photograph. So I said to the family, I'm going to identify 20 minutes during the time that you're here that I'm going to take photographs. And I will take photographs for that 20 minutes. And the rest of the time, I'm putting the camera down. And if I miss anything, so much. Well, that is a form of invitational clutter. If you just constantly snap and snap and snap and snap and snap, number one, you're taking away from your experience, and you're also creating lots of work ahead of time. And I think, in Productive Environment Institute, we focus on paper and digital because we have found, and Nancy, you and I have talked about that is the most difficult to deal with. And the photographs and the memorabilia are the most difficult within that, because they represent the emotion. It's the representation of our hopes and our dreams and our fears. And I don't think it's possible for most people to do that without some kind of help, some kind of guidance, accountability. And it may even be, with another girlfriend doing it together, or, there are some way. But for one person to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to go through all this digital, all these documents and all that kind of stuff, I just don't think it can happen. I think we need accountability and support. And that's what both of our companies offer to people, is that kind of support, but also expertise, because we've done it before. We know there's nothing you can tell us or show that we haven't seen before in all the years that we've done it. So I love it.
Awesome. So one quick thing I want to bring up is, one of Barbara's quotes is her most famous quote: "Clutter is postponed decisions," right? And we've all heard of decision fatigue as well. And so what I feel like your Contentment Challenge does is it helps maybe not eliminate, but minimize the number of decisions you need to make. Because if you are content with what you have and you have that spending freeze and you're not bringing anything new in, those are less things you need to make decisions about later as they become clutter.
100%. 100%. That's one of the biggest benefits to putting that boundary in place and saying, I'm not spending anything extra for 3 months. Mm-hmm. I can't even tell you how much mental space has been cleared up for me. I'm doing it right now. I mean, when we're recording this, it's February 6th. I've done it for the last month. I've got 2 months to go. I look at whatever, something in Target, something in my email inbox, an ad that pops up on Instagram. And I know my automatic answer is no, keep going, keep moving on with your life. Whereas when I don't have this boundary set, I might look at it and be like, I could use that. Do I need that? Do I want that? Do I have the money for that? Where is that? Oh, okay, I'll think about that. And there it is, like 30 seconds to a minute later, I have just sat there and hemmed and hawed about something that wasn't even in my life a minute ago. I didn't need it a minute ago, but marketing and ads these days are so powerful and they're so pervasive. They're everywhere that to have that boundary set up, I feel so free. I mean, before I started, I go through and I unsubscribe to all of my emails that have anything to do with stores that I like. I don't need to see it. I already know the answer's no. It's just so freeing. Just to know, like, my decision is already made. Like, I don't grocery shop at Target. I don't need to look at all those things. I grocery shop at the grocery store. That's all. I know I need food and that's it. All my other decisions are made for me. It's these little changes that actually make such a big difference. And you feel freed up in your time and in your brain space, which is awesome.
I love it. I love it. Can you tell us a little bit about how the challenge works? I'm kind of curious overall, like, and you say January, February, March, what's going on the rest of the year? Are we, yeah. And also, I think you kind of answered it. I was also thinking, is this just physical stores or is this digital? So you're basically saying it's everything. It's buying anything. And I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but if you could address this, does that count business as well? You're a business owner. So do you give yourself space and say, oh, well, it's for my business, so I'm going to buy this, or is everything off the table? Personally,
I think those are excellent questions. And those are things that I think, have to work out ahead of time. So if you know the kind of business that you run, whoever's listening, like, what you need in your business. If you feel, I personally like to challenge myself to do it in my personal life and in my business, because most of the time, business owners these days have purchased courses online that they have never opened or used.
correct.
And right? Yeah, I am too. I'm guilty. Most of the time, moms have bought courses that they have not even opened or used. And so I challenge people, don't just, if you can, put those parameters on every area of your life. Another question you have to ask yourself, if you're a mom, does this pertain to buying new things for my kids or not? Because I've done a contentment challenge in the last several years where I'm like, I'm not buying anything new for my kids. They're going to have to struggle. They don't struggle at all. I'm the one struggling right along. They don't know, but I have to be more resourceful with their clothing. And so on the times that I've done the contentment challenge and I've included the kids, what I do is I say, okay, what do my kids need for winter that they don't have? I buy those few select things before I start. And then I'm like, sorry, guys, we're not getting anything new. Like, we're just not. And that's very freeing. But then this contentment challenge I'm in right now, I have allowed myself to buy things for the kids if I feel like they need it. I'm just trying to focus on needs. But I was like, this time I'm just going to focus on me and my spending in my heart. But yeah, I think for the first time, if you're doing this for the first time, my encouragement is to go all in and see how far you can get. Like, try to not spend anything for the business. Try to not spend anything for yourself, and try to not do anything for your kids. Think ahead of time and plan intentionally ahead of time. Get the things you need, plan activities, get the winter jackets, get the snow boots, get whatever you need, and then just stop and prove to yourself, we actually have a lot more resources in our homes than we realize that we do. What were your other questions? Oh, how do you move on afterwards, or what do you do the rest of the year?
Yeah, that was, why just January, February, March instead of like every other or every quarter? Like, how did you come up with that?
Well, I think it just was born out of that one time I went to that conference and I heard from the Lord, and I just kept hearing 3 months, and I wrestled with him on it. I was like, nope, 2 months, 1 month, 1.5. And he was like 3. And I tell you what, the freedom I experienced that 3rd month was far greater than in month 1. I think that just sticking it out, month 1 was almost this detox of like getting rid of my old habits. Month 2 was really wrestling through the spiritual side and really praying and pressing into the Lord. And month 3 was when I really unlocked, I feel like, freedom in it. Now, I will say, if 3 months is overwhelming and you're like, I don't want to do that, do it for 1 month. Anything is better than nothing.
Right.
And I think that whoever's listening needs to pray and get clear with the Lord and figure out what you want. I had a friend, I actually had her on my podcast. She did it for a whole year. She and her husband did the contentment challenge for a year. They wanted to get out of debt. They wanted to really press into God and what he had for their lives. their story's incredible. I've recorded it. I'll try to send you the links for it. But we did 2 podcast episodes. They paid off so much more debt than they ever thought that they would. The blessings in their life just like exploded. Like the benefits that they got from that. She messaged me recently, was like, we think we might do it again because of what we experienced that full year of doing the Contentment Challenge. So I think the timing really is up to whoever does it. But for me, I feel like the first quarter of every year feels really good to just get that reset and those like habits in place so that the rest of the year I can kind of be intentional. But I have heard of like, yeah, you can do it any time of the year. It doesn't have to be the first 3 months. You could do it in the fall or the summer. I really like the cleansing purge right after Christmas when you feel like you're drowning in stuff. I like
and you said something that I think is really important, and I don't want our listeners to miss it because I think it's key. And that is, it's not just stopping buying, it's adding something of value. And I have a personal experience that I just finished a 21-day water fast. I went 21 days with nothing except water. And the only reason that I was able to do it was because I filled up the time that I spent preparing, buying, eating. I mean, I still did cook for my family. I didn't cook for myself, but I eat differently than they did. So that still saved me some time. It saved me some shopping time. But I filled that extra time up with prayer and scripture. And I never would ever have made it through. And also I had accountability partners. I had other people who were doing it. So on the day that I was discouraged, somebody else was discouraged, I could encourage them, and then vice versa. And that made a difference. So, and Pastor Vlad Savchuk was the guy that I did it under. And he said, if you stop eating and you don't add anything else, that's a diet. If you stop eating and you add prayer and scripture, that's a fast. Well, I think the same same principle applies to your contentment challenge. It isn't just stopping the buying, but it's filling it up with other things that make your life richer. And what a role model for your children. What an opportunity to talk to your children about why you're doing it. And also to share. So many children here in America have no clue how blessed they are. You know, I heard that if you have one car, you are 2% of the population. 2% of the people in the world have one car.
Wow.
And yet many children, you know, we would see 3 vehicles sitting in the car. And so it's such a wonderful time for conversation about meaningful things. So Nancy, thank you so much. This is just so much good stuff to think about. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun to talk about. I'm passionate about all this stuff. I could talk about it all day because I've seen the fruit of it in my life and how God's used it. And so you guys are doing awesome work. I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you. Just to wrap us up, what will they find at nancyray.com/contentment challenge? What's there? What do we get when we get there?
We'll find an explanation of the Contentment Challenge, kind of how to prepare for it, what to expect. Because there is like a 10-day preparation time that I recommend before starting it to get those hobbies in place, and maybe some books that you'd like to read, and also buy anything that you need for the next 3 months. And the key word there is need. Don't go on a shopping spree. And get the need, right? People are like, I got to binge shop real quick. I'm going on the Contentment Challenge. No, you need to be intentional. But to prepare so that you're not like, oh man, I really do need this thing. And then you're not wrestling during it. And so you'll find information on that. You will find a podcast episode that takes you really deep into my whole journey of like my first Contentment Challenge, what God spoke to me, how he used it. And so it's more of an in-depth story to my husband and I story and how God really created the Contentment Challenge. And then also I did create a mini course for $15 called the Contentment Challenge that you can buy ahead of time. It is audio encouragement. I have weekly encouragement. It's like a podcast basically meant for the Contentment Challenge that you can listen to. You get the weekly or monthly challenges, the scriptures to memorize, some book recommendations, just a lot of different things that through the years as I've done this have really made it the most beneficial, where you're getting the most out of it. So I just put that together for $15 for anybody. Oh, and it comes with like a devotional workbook that you work through the whole time that you're on it. So That's at nancyray.com/contentment challenge.
That is great. Ed says this is really an eye opener for me. She's got a few kids too, so she's probably like, oh my gosh, okay. That's fast. That is awesome. So definitely go to that website, guys, and check out the Contentment Challenge. And as we wrap up, as we always do, if you have not gotten your productive environment score lately or ever, go to productiveenvironmentscore.com and find out how productive your environment is. And then, of course, we talked about digital and physical clutter. Our upcoming webinar, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, is productiveenvironment.com/webinar. And our current upcoming one is about digital. It's about your digital information. So go make sure you register for that webinar. And again, if you're listening to this at a different time, it may be about your physical office space, but they are both, just like we talked about with the photography, they're both important, your physical and digital. And there has to be a bridge between those two in our time now. So definitely check that out. So thank you so much, Nancy Ray. Work and play with Nancy Ray. So thank you for joining us today. We really loved this conversation.
Thank you,
so much for having me. It was so fun.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.